Hey guys, Pierre here, welcome back. I am bringing you another Brawlmachine Battlereport. This time I'm using my Issyria list with a few minor changes compared to last game. I am facing against Matt and his Thagrosh2 list. So this is a new matchup for me. I only faced Legion, I think, once in my entire life against a local in the Philippines. So this is something new. I am also going to try and change the format of the battle reports as well. I hope you like it. If you don't, please do write in the comments down below how you want me to do the battle reports. Would you prefer the previous format or this new one? So let's go on and move to the lists. So here's my new updated Issyria list. I am bringing again the caster Issyria. Her battle group consists of a Banshee, a Chimera, and a Hemera. The rest of her army consists of the Arcanist Mechanic, Sight, and a minimum unit of the Mage Hunter Strike Force. So from my previous game against Trolls, I realized that I was committing a lot of my points in the Mage Hunter Strike Force. So I made a few changes. I removed the UA. I reduced them to a minimum unit because I felt like the UA doesn't really matter for the scale of Brawlmachine. If you have comments about that, please do write down in the comments down below. I added in Chimera so that I have a different arc node. So I replaced the Phoenix with a Banshee and Chimera. My previous experiences, I played my two arc nodes too aggressively. I lost them both, which essentially was already the death sentence for me in that game. Although the Phoenix did live, but it wasn't effective. It didn't have enough systems to be effective. So I believe this game is a better output compared to my previous one against Trolls. With that, I also added in an Arcanist Mechanic so that I have a little bit more support for my Warjacks. It also helps Issyria with her focus management. So for my opponent's list, Matt is bringing with him Thagrosh2. Thagrosh's battle group consists of an Angelius, a Nera. The rest of his army consists of Piano the Lash, a Spell Martyr, a Forsaken, and a maximum unit of Blighted Misraptors. For our table, we are playing the Orbit scenario from the Brawlmachine version 1.0 rule set. Our terrain consists of 3 forests down the lower half of the board, 2 acid pools at the southern half, an acid cloud in the center, a house blocking line of sight on the rectangular zone on the left side of the table, and 2 walls on the northern side of the table. For deployment, I win the roll-off to determine whether to play first or to choose sides. I decide to choose sides. I wanted to make use of the forests to protect me since I have a lot of Pathfinder units. So Matt now is forced to deploy first on the top half of the board. He deploys with Thagrosh right in the center. Right behind him is the Spell Martyr. On the right side of the flank, he has the Blighted Misraptors and Fianna the Forsaken closing off that area. And on his left flank, he has Nera, Angelius, and the Forsaken. On my deployment, I counter deploy by mirroring much of what he's doing. So I have Issyria near to the center. She is protected by both of the heavy warjacks. Beside her is the Arcanist. On the right-hand side of the flank, the Chimera is supporting the minimum unit of Mage Hunter Strike Force units, and Scythe closes off the right-hand flank. So let's go on to turn 1 Thagrosh. Matt's turn 1 is relatively quick. He casts Dragon's Blood on Angelius and Aggravator to Thagrosh. He then runs Thagrosh to the center of the board, close to the flank. His Angelius runs to the center left-hand side of the board to threaten the rectangular zone. His Blighted Misraptors do the same on the right-hand side, being supported by Fianna the Lash. The Nerath moves on to the center of the board to try and support the Angelius. The Forsaken hangs back a little bit, but is close enough to support both of Matt's heavy warjacks. The spell mark here, not the smell mark. The spell mark here runs to the flag and will probably be the one to claim it the rest of the game. So my turn 1 begins and I power up all my jacks. I start off my activations with Scythe. I am trying to find ways, or rather a good shot to target the Blighted Mist Hunter unit leader, because I would be able to shoot it and Nisraptor number 4 with Multiplier. However, with Matt's placement, it would make it difficult for me to do that because he is behind a wall that would make his Nisraptor's def 18. So even with Scythe's Wrath 8, I wouldn't be able to hit or kill it, or at least I would have a low chance of doing it. So I decide to shoot number 5 instead. With doing that, at least ensures that his chargers are reduced and Scythe would be safe from harm, because she is now placed behind the woods, which I learned from my previous game that I didn't need to run and be in the woods to benefit from her tree walker. So after that, I move on with the Chimera. I know that I have to use Blinding Light to reduce the number of attacks from the Nisraptors. So I run it up the board right next to the Acid Pool. I then activate the Mage Hunter Strike Force, which right now, as I'm doing the recording, I realize that I pushed them too far and is technically a very bad play on my end. I should have pushed them back to where Scythe is and then supported the following turn. I then activate the Chimera and the Phoenix, the Banshee. The Banshee just moves up right next to the flag, the forest the forest with the flag, and then Chimera runs to the opposite woods to try and be able to use her Arcanoid's abilities. I then activate the Arcanist. I run him up base to the flag, and lastly I activate Issyria. I cast Admonition on herself so that I would be able to run away from Matt's threats should he decide to go for an assassination run. I then activate and I then cast Inviolable Resolve on Chimera, trying to protect her. That ends my turn. On Matt's turn 2, he tries and look for a charge lane on my Chimera and my Sphinx, my Banshee. However, I used the exact calculations. Matt gave me a tip, actually, using the aura size to guess the threat ranges of your opponents. So with the aura size now visible, I managed to place my Warjacks in their optimal position wherein he wouldn't be able to charge me, and I would still be able to either shoot or charge him depending on what I do on the following turn. So in this case, Matt just simply lines up his heavies to charge and probably kill my jacks on the following turn, which is very beneficial for me. So he moves on to his other units. He starts off with the what they call that, Forsaken. He moves her up to support both the heavy warjacks, and then we go with Fiona the Lash, and then she manages to use her very long weapon and beat back the Chimera into the acid pool. That doesn't really harm me much, but losing boxes makes it difficult for me to... Getting moved out of position gives Matt a better charge lane for my Mage Hunter Strike Force, which is what I did not want. So had I positioned them better, I would have been able to utilize them more on the following turn. But with what's happening now, Matt manages to charge with 3 of his Blighted Nisraptors and deals a lot of damage to my Chimera and kills, if I'm not mistaken, 4 of my Mage Hunter Strike Force models. So, like I said, it's a waste of a unit on my end, but lessons learned. I don't need to push that far, that aggressive. It's something I need to relearn. Matt then follows up with Thagrosh, who at this point can't actually do a lot. I think he was planning to line up Thagrosh to do an assassination run or support his heavy war beasts in killing my warjacks on his following turn. So my turn 2 begins, and I know it is going to be my feet turn. So I start off with Issyria, I pop her feet, I move her up right next to the flag, and then I cast Crusader's Call. Because I know that the Banshee is exactly 12 inches away from the Nera. So I'm hoping I could kill it this turn. For my allocation previously, I forgot to mention that I have to upkeep the admonition of Issyria. I have a free upkeep from Hemera and I use it on the Invaluable Resolve. So this brings me up to 7 focus. I then allocate 2 focus to the Banshee and another 2 focus to Hemera. That leaves me at 3 focus for Issyria. I wanted to cast some spells, but the Chimera was engaged by the Blighted Nisraptors, and Hemera is way too far to be effective. I wanted to use Blinding Light to increase the odds of me hitting my targets. So with that, I end Issyria's activation. I move on to the Banshee. I declare a charge. I move on to the Arcanist and give concentrated power on the Banshee so that his sword is at pound 19. So then I move on to the Banshee. I charge the Nera. I use all of my attacks to kill it. I realize here that if I had I had positioned the Banshee better, I might have been able to contest the zone. Because right now, when we move on to Hemera, Hemera is the only one on the zone to contest. So yeah, once the Neraf dies, I activate Hemera, I charge Angelius, and I think this is another of my mistakes. I have 3 focus, minus 1 on the charge, so I have 2. Hemera only has 1 weapon. I'm on feet turn, but what I do is I decide to boost to hit. I had a good chance of hitting even with 8s because of the feet, but either way, I spend the 2 focus to boost to hit, boost to damage, and only bring the Neraf down to half with no branch broken. So that ends Hemera's activation. I then activate the Chimera. Here's another mistake. I think I could have positioned him better to be able to hit both the Blighted Nisraptor unit leader and number 3. However, I decide to just focus on the unit leader. I didn't think about being able to kill it and number 3 both. So this comes back to bite me on the next turn. Once I kill the unit leader, I have 1 extra focus from the power-up that I'm unable to use. So with that, I then activate the Mage Under Strike Force and declare a charge on the Blighted Nisraptor number 2. Number 1. I can't read the numbers, sorry. Yeah, so either way, I decide to swing with both dudes and manage to kill it. Lastly, I activate Sight. I use Multiplier. I kill Blighted Nisraptor number 2 and then Fianna the Lash. Sadly, Fianna the Lash is 2.3 inches away from the unit leader for me to be able to kill it and claim the zone. So with that, I end my turn 2. So Matt's turn 3 begins and he realizes he is within 5 inches of the Banshee, making him unable to cast spells. He wants to cast Manifest Destiny this turn, so he decides to charge Hemera to get out of the Banshee's 5-inch bubble. Once there, before he completes his charge, he makes his charge attack and then casts Manifest Destiny. He then swings all of his attacks, spends most of his fury and buys attacks to kill Hemera. He then activates the Angelius with Dragon's Blood still up, and he decides to charge the Banshee with it. He buys a lot of attacks and manages to kill leave the Banshee at a critical level. I think he left it with 5 hitboxes after the flurry of attacks. He then activates the Forsaken and finishes off the Banshee. He then activates the last Nisraptor and kills off the Chimera. So my turn 3 starts and things are looking pretty dicey. I know there's a chance for me to still run away with the game, especially I still have Sight, and Sight really contributes. So what I do is I start off with the Arcanist. Since he's practically useless, I run him off to Matt's rectangular zone, and I activate Issyria. I move her out of the forest. I cast Blinding Light on the last Nisraptor, boost it to make sure it hits, and then use Velocity to claim back the flag. I then activate the Mage Hunter Strike Force, and this is where I realize I effed up. I should have placed the what they call that Strike Force, Mage Hunter Strike Force models better on the previous charge, so that I would have been able to charge the last remaining Nisraptor without fear of hitting the Acid Pool, which would have killed my model instantly. I might be reading the rules wrong, but do please write it down in the comments if you think I understood it wrong. Because what I did is, instead of charging through the acid pools with 2 guys, I decided to move them and then make a single combined melee attack, which I miss, and then I'm unable to kill the Nisraptor. So when I activate Scythe, I initially wanted to run her up his Matt's flag to deny, so that I would have scored 2 points this turn. So what happens is, I instead move Scythe to the middle of the board, and then try and hit with all of my multiplier attacks at the Nisraptor. However, even with Blinding Light, the Nisraptor is at, mistaken, base mat 14 minus 2, so he is mat 16. Base def 14 minus 2 from Blinding Light. With being engaged, he is now at def 18, so I still needed 10s, and it's not my feet. I still needed 8s, and it's not my feet turn. So I use all of my multi-fire attacks and miss with them all. So with that, I don't manage to trigger Run and Gun, which, if I had killed the Nisraptor, I would still be able to contest Matt's flag. So looking at the board state, I decide to call it here because I only score 1 point and Matt would score 2, bringing him up to 6 to my 4. On his turn, he doesn't even need to do anything because he just needs to kill the Arcanist, which is a very easy task. He would score another 2 points, bringing him up to 8, and then I would be at 5. So he still has a Angelius that could contest my flag, bringing the objective total to 8 to 3, which would be in his victory. So we decide not to play through the game and end the turn, and the game to his victory. So here we go. I hope you enjoyed this battle report. We have a Legion victory on this channel. As you've noticed, I have 0 victories as of yet, but Warmachine is that game. You're going to have your ass handed to you with every game until you get that sweet, sweet victory. So yeah, I hope you liked me changing the formats. I've heard some suggestions from a few of my viewers, so I'm trying to reduce the overall runtime of the battle report. And then I've heard that the lists aren't really readable, so I changed how I displayed the list. I took off the card displays as it takes a lot of time for me to sync the card pop-up and the commentary with it. So please do tell me in the comments if you like the new format, or if you'd like me to go back to the old format with a few changes. So yeah, and I also compressed the entire turn into one commentary rather than a per activation commentary. So yeah, please tell me if you like it. Tell me how you'd want me to present it. Anything to make your viewing experience better. And if ever you want to have a match with me, just please tell me. Let's try and schedule it over Discord. I still have a match scheduled with Sean Braden. It's been very hard to find a schedule that fits both of us because of the time zone difference. So yeah, I hope you like, comment, and subscribe, and please stay tuned for the next video.